أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على رسول الله وعلى آل بيت رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. So inshallah, we're going to continue this topic. Hopefully that this is going to be the last session. This last part is going to be on some narrations about the importance of supplications, the importance of dua. The first four sessions we were talking about the Quranic view on supplications, and we said those supplications that are guaranteed to be answered are those supplications related to our perfection and our spiritual growth. When we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those non-materialistic needs that they should be a priority for us, being close to Him, being those good servants, reaching proximity from Allah, all of these supplications that are related to our perfections. So inshallah, we are going to continue tonight on some of the narrations on these topics. So we were talking from Quranic point of view. There are some narrations that help us understand these views more, and some of the narrations that are related to the adab or the manners of dua. Sometimes we don't perform the supplication in a good manner. We have to be respectful. We have to, there's a way to approach dua. There's a way to approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the more we do it in the adab of the dua, in the manners of dua, as we see in the narrations that would come, this is will raise the chances that our supplications get accepted. So here at the beginning, I'll start with this narration from the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he said, "Call upon Allah, and you can be confident for the answering." We mentioned last session that one of the reasons why supplications may not be answered is that we may not have a firm conviction in the answer. Like we may ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we are in doubt. We may say like, I'm not sure that you are going to do it or not. I'm in doubt. So we do such prayer, but we don't have that strong belief that whatever we asked for is going to be answered. So once we have this kind of doubtfulness inside our hearts, which mainly, as I view it, comes from the lack of knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We doubt Him. Like we know by our minds, just by our intellectual minds, like yeah, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do it. He's the all powerful. He's the he can do it. This is in the intellectual side. We all know that. But making these intellectual points or intellectual knowledge, sinking in our hearts is not something easy. So it's not important to know how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is powerful, how much Allah is wise. That's, something that everyone can read. That's something, like even you can memorize. But the most important is to make all of this information grounded in the heart. So at the time of dua, if we have this doubt that, oh my God, like maybe our prayers are not going to be accepted, this is a lack of knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, like, call upon Allah and you have to be confident for the answer. If you are not confident that you are going to get the answer, in either way, there's an answer that will come. Whether it is a postponed answer, whether it is a fast answer, whether there's an answer that would come. So you have to be confident that your supplications have been heard and you will get answered. That's why I don't know who I forgot which scholar who said this thing that I'm going to say right now. I forgot where I read it, but I remember that some scholars they recommend that after you do your prayer, after you do your supplication and dua, just say, like usually in Arabic we say like tam, like yeah, it has been done. My supplication has been answered. So directly after you do this, after you do your supplications, you say that's done. You get that feeling into your heart that yeah, I have been, someone, like I have been answered. So that's why the ayah which says, which we were talking about in the last sessions, I am near, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I am near. So, we should not just read it, and that's the important of contemplating upon Quran, and that's what is tadabbur, and that's what's reflection. It's not then when we read this ayah, just we read it and as if we are blind and deaf, we are just reading, it's just like any book. No, we have to feel this nearness. We have to feel this closeness. We have to feel that we are servants, that His Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so near. So that's why we should always expect good from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this depends on the knowledge, how much we know Him. The more we know Him, the more we are confident about His actions, about his wisdom, about all of these things. So also, um, this is what we have some traditions also that they forbid asking for anything which you are not sure that it's going to be answered. So if you have this kind of doubt, it is better that you correct this this doubt. You try to do some polishing and correct all of this information that you have, and this doubtfulness and these feelings before before you do it, because sometimes it shows that the supplicant doesn't have a real intention for asking for it. Once you are doubting, which means sometimes it may means that you don't want it, you don't really want it. So sometimes it is related to our real intentions. Sometimes you may be surprised, but if you dig deep in your heart, sometimes you notice that maybe you ask for something, and you don't have a real intention for asking for it. You are just asking for it from an intellectual point, but it doesn't come from your heart. And anything that does not come from the heart is not it's not a proper supplication. So that's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, another tradition, he says, resort to Allah in your needs and seek refuge in Him in your misfortunes, and humiliate yourselves before Allah and we seek Him, because verily supplication is the essence of worship. We have talked about this at the beginning of the sessions that, you know, worship has an essence, and ruhul ibadah, ad-du'a ruhul ibadah. So if we don't do supplication, then we are missing the essence of worship. That's why we have mentioned, like with Surah Al-Fatiha, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. It is you who we worship, and it is you who we ask guidance from. So, or we ask help from. So there's a big relation between huge relation between supplication and worship. If we think we want to be worshippers for Allah without having supplication, that is in the Quranic language considered a kind of istikbar, kind of kibar, which is not being humble. So which really affects our worship. So there's no proper worship without supplication. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam continues to say, and no believer calls upon Allah, but he answers him. So here's that all supplications will be answered, but either it's going to be fast, it is speeded up to the supplicant in this world, or it's going to be kept in reserve for him for the next one, or his sins are going to be forgiven in proportion to his supplication. Sometimes the supplications that we do, they do not maybe give us the things that we want, but maybe they are removing our sins even without us knowing. So there's always an answer that will come, but it depends on the situation, uh, either it's speeded up or not. So here's an important will from Imam Ali alayhi salam to Imam Hassan alayhi salam, which is written in Nahj al-Balagha. And it is so important and it is so like heart opening when we see these words from Imam Ali alayhi salam. This is in Mafatih in Nahj al-Balagha. His Imam is saying to Imam Hassan, of course, like this is a will for every one of us. He says, then he, on the importance of dua, he said, then he placed the keys of his treasures in your hands. This is really important. So the 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 keys to all of the treasure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has is in our hands. How? In the sense that He allowed you to ask Him. This is really profound and amazing. Since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us that chance to ask Him, He allowed us to ask Him without any restrictions, without any timing. Anytime you can just ask whatever you are, whatever time it is. There's you don't need to make any appointment with Allah. You don't need to make all of these formalities, either just from your heart. So since He gave us this permission, He allowed us to ask, then as if He have gave us the keys to all of His treasures. So as if here Imam Ali is saying, all you need to do to get all of these treasures is just to ask. Is just to ask. And that's why it's really important to ask. Like as we said, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or making supplications is not, the beauty of it is not just by getting your answered, your prayers answered. The beauty of it, the most important part of it is when we have this connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we feel how much servants we are, when we feel how much this kind of a humility, this kind of, poorness, needness that we feel, that we need Him. That kind of emotion that we get, that kind of connection that we get is worth many, many, many answers that we will get. So that's why probably you may forget many things in your life. Maybe certain incidents, happy incidents, or any kind of incident that happened. Maybe whatever happened in your life, even if it's so beautiful, maybe it's out of your memory right now. You don't remember it. And I don't know if you can contemplate on that. If I ask this question, what is the moment that you will never forget in your life? Or what is the best moment in your life? What is the happiest moment in your life? Probably, I don't know. This is what I think the answers will be. You will not remember like I don't know, like a gathering or like a family thing. Probably you will remember those seconds or minutes or those moments that we had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with true connection. Those moments, they bring for the human being a lot of pleasure and tranquility and peace to the degree that they cannot be forgotten. They just fill you everywhere. Like you are filled with these emotions, with these moments, even if it is just a single moment where you had this true connection, even if it was like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you will still remember it and you will not forget it. Maybe if it just you fresh your mind, you can say, yeah, like this is the most thing that when I remember it makes me happy again, and it brings me pleasure, because that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we make at the time of dua is the important thing. It's not, just getting our supplications and prayers answered. So therefore the Imam says that therefore whenever you wish, you may get the doors of his bounties opened with prayer. This is amazing. Here the Imam is saying you just have to ask. You just have to ask and get the heavy rains of his mercy to fall upon you just by dua. So the Imam continues and he explains some of the important points, and he said, delay in acceptance of the prayer should not disappoint you. He's talking to Imam Hassan, but actually he's talking to us because we are those human beings who get really disappointed when our prayers don't get accepted right away. Or so he says that delaying an acceptance of the prayer should not disappoint you. because the granting of a prayer is according to the measure of your intention. We're going to talk about it about this point later, but how much your prayer is going to be accepted, it depends on your intention. That's why it's really important to be aware when you make the dua, to be present, your heart to be present. Is not a dua that comes out of your tongue. It should be a real dua that you really need, that comes from your heart when you are present. This is when, if your intention is there, is real, so when it is when the prayer granted to be accepted. So the Imam continues to say, and sometimes the answering of your prayer is delayed so that it brings a greater reward to the asker and a better granting to the expectant. So you think that it has been delayed because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't hear you, or your supplications is not accepted, but this is not true. Maybe it is delayed for your own sake. There's a greater reward than whatever you have answered for. Maybe there's a right time that you don't know. So here's an important point, that we should always doubt um, ourselves, in a sense that, if things doesn't go the way we like, we should not see ourselves that why this has not happened, or why it didn't turn to be the way I want. We should doubt ourselves, but we should not doubt Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should always have this trust that whatever He plans, whatever He grants us, is always the best for us. So sometimes Imam says you ask for a thing and it is not given to you, but a better thing is given to you immediately or later. I think if anyone of us will just remember certain incidents in his life, or he will remember this, he will notice, yeah, I asked one time for this, but actually I didn't know that it's not good for me, so something better was given for me. So, or a thing is diverted from you for some greater good for you, because often you ask for a thing which would have destroyed your religion had it been given to you. Many times when we ask for things, and these things we don't know that they are not good for us or for our religion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not answer these prayers. And here we mentioned this last time, that if we ourselves know that with this prayer that I'm making right now, this bad thing is going to happen, we don't want to do this prayer again. So at that time when we are doing this application, we might not know that this is not good for us. So these applications won't go through. Why? Because it's not good for us. So at that time we will think that, okay, I made this application, but Allah didn't accept it because it's not good for us. But we here tend to assume wrong about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and think ill about him. But in reality, he's preventing many bad things either to us or to our religion. Just things that we have asked for. So therefore the Imam says your prayer should be for things whose beauty should last for you. This is really important. These are some narrations that really go parallel with those ayat, and with the when we mentioned what are the supplications, what are the needs that we need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are those? So here the Imam are saying that ask for things whose beauty should last for you. There are things that they just go away really fast. It's not worth it. So the Imam says, as for wealth, it will not last for you, nor will last you will last for it. So here again, we can remember from the last sessions that whenever we ask for something related to our perfection in this life and in the hereafter, and our inner growth and working, those are those are beautiful things that are going to last, things that we are going to carry for us in the hereafter. So and again, it's not that we should not ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for things in this dunya, but always we have to connect it with the akhirah, so it will be everlasting. So the um, here the Alama al-Tabai in his Tafsir al-Mizan, he's explaining a bit about that part in the will of Imam Ali alayhi salam, that granting of the prayer is according to the measure of intention. Imam Ali alayhi salam, means that the answer is giving according to the call. So the supplicant is granted whatever he asks for from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the firm conviction of his consciousness or his conscience and with his heart, and not whatever he asked for words. I have mentioned this. It is the dua that you make with your heart and not with your tongue, with a firm conviction. This, the firm conviction while you are present with the heart, it makes your intention, makes it a dua. Otherwise, it's not considered a dua. So, also we have a tradition from Imam Baqir alayhi salam, where he said, a servant does not extend his hand towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but that Allah is ashamed to return it empty. So anytime you ask, you're going to be answered, but the answer will depend. So he puts it from his bounty and mercy, whatever he wishes, whatever he wants from his bounty and mercy. So when one of you calls upon Allah, he should not return his hand until he wipes it on his head and face. This is one of the like adab, good manners of the dua, manners of dua. The importance of raising your hands like a beggar when you want to do a dua. And this is how Rasulullah used to do it. Rasulullah used to do it this way. If you see the traditions that mentions how Rasulullah used to dua, how he used to raise his hand like a beggar, asking for food or anything like that. This is the way. And if you see some of the pictures of,
حاضر
if
روح.
if you see some of the pictures of,
السلام عليكم.
if you see some of, alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. So if you see some of the pictures of ulama, for example, Ayatollah Bahjat or whatever, you will see that they raise their hands really upward, on the top of their heads, like really, really up. So it's not like just their hands will be just in front of their faces. They will raise it up over their heads. And this is a form of showing humility and servitude of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, when one of the adab of the dua, that whenever you finish the dua, while you have raised your hand to wipe your head and face, you know, um, these are some traditions about the manners of the dua. So also we have a tradition from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, where he said, verily Allah does not answer the memorized prayer by a forgetful heart. And this is what we mentioned earlier, that even if you do thousands of prayers, but your heart is in ghafla, is not present. You are asking Allah for something with your tongue, but your heart is thinking of something else. Your mind is thinking of something else. Your heart is not present. You don't really feel the need, you know? Everything in the human being is related to his heart. The main thing in this human that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala concentrates a lot about is the heart. Always He wants a clean heart and not forgetful heart, a present heart. It all is something not only related to the intellect, the most important part is the heart. So that's why, and of course, we're not talking about that heart, which is like the pine organ, which just pumps blood. No, the heart which has a bigger, wide meaning than just the organ that is in our chests. So um, if we wanna really focus on the good manners of the dua, if you wanna get our prayers answered, we have to do it with a present heart, with a present heart. And probably, I think that every one of us had this moment where his heart was really present when he was making a dua, and you can maybe relate to this, if especially if we had something something, for example, a big, like a big need from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something that really we wanted, especially if there's something, we assume it is bad going on, someone sick, something that we feel threatened with, anything which is huge, and we feel that we are fleeing towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm sure that many of us had these moments where we do this dua when we are in real need, we feel that our heart is present. So the Imam Ali alayhi salam also said, Allah does not accept the prayer of an inattentive heart. That's again, if your heart is inattentive, then that's not that's not called a dua. According to Allama, when we're discussing the previous ayat, it's not called a dua. So you may assume that I'm doing a dua a long time ago, but actually it's not entitled as a dua. So also the here yeah, and so we mentioned this. So also there's also an important point that maybe sometimes some of us will go into this route and he will pray against other people, and it has been mentioned in Torah, and this has been quoted from the Al-Mizan, that Allah says to his servant, verily, when you pray against one of my servants because he was unjust to you, then at the same time there may be another of my servants praying against you too, because you were unjust to him. Now, if you so wish, I shall grant your prayer and also his prayer against you. And if you so wish, I shall postpone the cases of both of you for the day of resurrection. This is really important because sometimes we get annoyed by certain people, and sometimes we maybe someone has do something unjust for us. We think that we are mazloom, that something unjustful has been made to us, and we directly pray against those people. But there's the important point here is that you thought, or even if it is the case that this person is a zalim, is he really did something unjust for you. Really, he's really unjustful. What happens is that one day you will do something unjustful. That's how human beings, we are not ma'asumin, we are not infallibles. So one day it will happen that you will do something unjust to someone. So even if that you know the other person, he didn't pray against you, or he didn't pray you know for his right, just because you oppressed someone, so that prayer that you made at the beginning will return to you, that you made for that unjust person. So here the Alama, in his Tafsir al-Mizan, he mentions this point very beautiful, and he says if someone prays for something, then it means that he's pleased with it. And this pleasure naturally extends to all those things which are similar to it in all respects. So he prays for punishment of his oppressor, someone who has oppressed you, and you praise for his punishment. Then he prays against him because of his oppression and injustice. So it means that he's pleased with the punishment of the unjust. Okay, I hope this is clear. So now, if he himself oppressed another person, which is most likely to happen in life, like this is how, you know, then the same prayer that you made against your oppressor, his oppressor, shall become a prayer against yourself. Maybe even if that person, he didn't make a prayer, he didn't ask for justice from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he didn't do anything. It's just the same prayer that you prayed even before years ago. It will come back to you, and it will be a prayer against yourself. Why? Because if you are pleased that if he is pleased that he himself should be punished, you know, then he will be given the same punishment what he wanted for his oppressor. You were feeling unjust, you asked for it, but now you are an oppressor, you get the same whatever you ask. So that's why, and if he is not pleased with it, then there is no reality, there's no prayer. So here's the importance that of when we feel unjust, and here we're not talking about like big issues, we are feeling unjust, like because of these, we are talking about brothers and sisters in Islam. We are talking about this one family thing. We are all brothers and sisters. So it is more from the iman, from the belief, to ask for guidance for that person, not to ask, for punishment. Instead of asking punishment for this person, let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide him. So at the time when you oppress, and the time will turn to be an oppressor, so guidance will come back to you. And this is a natural law in life. This is a natural law. If you ask, if you just forgive, you will be forgiven. If you just ask for punishment, you will be punished. If you are like you, whatever you do, it is going to be back to you. So it's really important that once this happens to you, we reflect that how much human beings are needy and poor, and instead of blaming other people for whatever they are, just reflect more in a merciful way that this person right now, he does not, like, I should not make a dua with a punishment for him, because he is in an eminent need for mercy. It's not a time where he gets more, punishment. He needs more mercy and guidance. So it's really important from manner ethical point of view, to have that wide chest, open chest, and not to blame others, not to get angry from others, whatever happened, ask, instead of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to punish others, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide others. So once we are in that position of oppression, we will get guidance, and someone will be asking for guidance for us the same way we asked for guidance for others. Here, I just remembered something. Where I remember Sheikh Ayatollah Bahjat. He used to pray, for example, Salatul Wahsha. Salatul Wahsha is a prayer that they make for anyone who passes away. The same night they bury him. So he used to make this salah every night, even even if he does not know like who is dead right now. And he do this salah, which is 2 rak'at, and he says this salah is for everyone who died in this day. I don't know, maybe he has more specific words. I don't remember, but he makes this salah for everyone. Maybe he does not know anyone who died that night, but he just give it to everyone. So here another scholar, he comments and say, when you do this, for example, every night, and you just send it to all, so be sure that the same thing is going to happen to you when you are in your grave. You will find someone doing the salah for you. So it's really important to have, these good manners, especially when we are dealing with each other as brothers and sisters. The more we have an open chest, open heart, mercy, the more we are really on the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not about how much worship we do. It's about how much humble we are, how much merciful to each other. That's what's it's more important. So also, we're going to end with this dua, inshallah, with this hadith, which is really also important from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, make supplications of Allah, like ask Allah in prosperity, so He will know you in hardship. Usually, human beings, as the Quran says, that they ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only when they are in hardship. And this is what the ayah says. And when we bestow favor upon man, he turns away. He just say, okay, like I just got it. He just turns away and distances himself, as if that needness for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fade away as soon as he get his answer, his favor. But when evil touches him, then he is full of extensive supplication. So it's really important here that we do not turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just at the time of hardship, just a time where we have something evil touching us. So it is really important to have this dua or supplication as a custom, as a not as a habit, just habitual act, but as something that we do in both times, prosperity and hardship. Is something that we do day and night, every day. And here, an important tip where we can, the best time to make these du'as are in the prayers while we are making this prayer and directly after prayer, because we have a lot of some traditions that says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when I don't memorize the hadith, which is hadith qudsi, said by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the meaning of that hadith is that, you know, you pray and you finish your prayer and you just go right away without asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I know at that time we just want to get rid of the prayer and finish, so we don't have just extra one time to make a dua or something. So what happens is you just make a dua, just you finish your prayer and you just leave your prayer mat and that's it. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it says that He will talk to that man, and he say, like, am I, stingy? Am I a stingy Lord? Like, why you are not asking me, especially after prayer? Like, alastu abakhilun abdi fayastabkhiluni? Like, am I like a stingy Lord? So he does not ask me. So this kind of hadith is mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say it after the prayer if a person does not ask. So that's why some of scholars says that after prayer, when you finish your prayer right away, right after tasbihat al-zahra, right after you relocate your feet, like, because it is really important to ask your needs right there at this moment, you know. And of course, the most important du'as that we can make is to stay on the straight path, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم, guidance, istiqama, be always on the straight path. So it's really important to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time. So that's one good way to bring a concentration in salah, is to include some of these du'as in your qunut, in your ruku', and your sujood. Let's memorize some of these du'as which are mentioned in the Quran. There's a lot, maybe more than 60 du'as that has been mentioned. So we memorize some of them and we say these du'as according to our needs at each time. Maybe one time we feel that we need this, we need this, we need, so whatever we need, we bring that du'a and we incorporate it in the prayer. So this also will help us to have more khushu'ah, because we have been raised in a way that whenever we want to do qunut in the prayers, the only dua that we can memorize, or like two or three of them, for example, Rabbi ghfirli wali walidayya, which is really an important dua, or another dua which is, for example, ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة, which they are so beautiful, but because we have done them so much, at the end they become meaningless. They have no meaning for us. So once we change these du'as according to our own needs, whatever need you have at this time, maybe at the moment you feel that you need something for your offspring, something related to, I don't know, honesty. So whatever you need, just incorporate it in that prayer. That makes your prayer more alive, and you can do it in ruku', you can do it in sujood. This way you can be more focused. So um, let me check the time. So here, uh, it's really important when Rasulullah said that make the du'as also in the time of prosperity, not in the time of hardship. Why? Because as the Allama says that Allah is the lordship, at every time. He's the lordship in every condition, in every situation. He's not only the lordship just at the time of hardship. What about the time of goodness, of prosperity? Still, Allah is a Lord. So why I should only remember Him at the time of hardship? So when I believe that Allah is a Lord, which means He's the Lord all the time, in every condition, in every situation, Therefore, if we call upon Allah as a Lord whose lordship is limited only to the time of hardship, then we are not calling on a true Lord. Because if I just only call upon Him at the specific time of hardship and I forgot the other time, which means I'm making Him a Lord just a specific time in a specific situation, in a specific condition, which means that He's not a true Lord for me. Because if He's a true Lord, then He is a true Lord all the time. Like I worship Him all the time, the same way. So that's why it's really important to have this relation in dua with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time. And probably, not probably, like something that uh, many, they recommend it, that the Sahifa Sajadiyya, I think I mentioned this last time, but because it has so much of a beauty. Like I don't know how can we leave the words of Imam Zain al-Abidin when we want to make a dua and just turn to other words. Even if you want to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for anything that you want, just open Sahif al-Sajadiyya for Imam Zain al-Abidin and reflect on how the Imam asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever you want, just there's a dua for anything that you want there. So it's really important to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that tongue because these words are indescribable in their beauty. And the proper way to do dua, how he starts with the dua, how he ends, and the important things that he makes dua for. In this Sahifa Sajadiyya, the Imam teaches us how to do a dua and what are the important things that we have to ask for. And it's amazing. Just I remember one thing right now. For example, just go for the dua where the Imam usually makes it when he's sick. So he does not say at the beginning, oh, please Allah make me healthy. It is amazing how he starts his dua and he says like, at what time shall I thank you? At the time where you granted me health and I was doing all of this worship for you, or at the time where you gave me, you made me sick, or like I am sick. So the Imam starts with this question like, at what time I should thank you more, at this time or at this time? Because when you made me healthy, I did this and this. When you made me sick, it is for these reasons. And it's amazing how he reflects, for example, on the sickness issue, from a higher perspective. So when you are sick, for example, and you go read that supplication from the Imam, you will the view and the perspective of illness and disease and sickness will totally change in your mind. You will have a completely different perspective. So that's why it's really important to take the words of those infallibles. I know that I always say this, صحيفة السجدية, دعاء عرفة, مناجاة الشعبانية, but they are really extremely, extremely, powerful words. So inshallah, we are going to end here tonight. Um, I don't know if inshallah we can continue this next time. Or we start a new topic. We will see how much these topics are important. وصلى الله على رسول الله وعلى آل بيت رسول الله. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.